For years, he was the first voice you heard when an episode started. The laugh, the energy, the guy who could talk a rusty Hulk into becoming a dream car. And then, one season, it all changed. The seat he used to occupy sat empty. His jokes were gone. The deals dried up. And Iron Resurrection suddenly felt quieter. Fans didn't notice all at once. At first, it was just a missing scene here or there, a negotiation segment without him, a build that somehow came together without his familiar commentary. But as the episodes rolled on, an unease settled over the viewership. Something wasn't right. Entire Reddit threads formed overnight, with people asking the same question. Where's Shag? Online forums buzzed with theories. Some thought he was taking time off. Others thought the producers were saving him for a later arc, and a few whispered that maybe something had happened behind the scenes, something deeper than scheduling or storyline adjustments. But no one had answers. Not the fans. Not the show. Not even the shop's social media pages, which stayed silent. What made the disappearance even stranger was how uncharacteristic it was for him. Shag wasn't the type to fade into the background. He was a force. The heartbeat of the negotiation table, the spark that kept long builds from becoming unbearable. In an industry where personalities can be as loud as engines, Shag's was unmistakable. And suddenly, that presence was gone without a farewell, a press release, or even a passing comment from the cast. People close to the show say that the absence created a visible change in the shop's rhythm. The chemistry between the crew shifted. Deals took longer. The pacing of episodes felt different. The energy, that signature pulse that made Iron Resurrection feel like a real shop first and a TV show second, seemed altered. And then, just recently, everything changed again. After years of silence, after endless speculation, Shag finally spoke up. Just 1 minute ago, in a new interview clip that sent shockwaves through fans, he revealed that there was a moment, a single turning point that made his decision for him. He didn't give the whole story yet, but he promised he would. And tonight, that promise is what brings us here. Before the cameras, before the national fan base, before Iron Resurrection became a hit, there was just a small Texas shop with a handful of people trying to build something great. And standing right in the center of that chaos, not with a wrench, but with a grin, was Shag. To most viewers, he was the comedic relief. The guy who bargained hard, cracked jokes, and smoothed over tense moments. But inside Martin Bros Customs, he was far more than that. He was the glue, the one who made customers feel comfortable, the one who turned long, exhausting deadlines into something manageable, the guy who could walk into a tough negotiation and walk out with a deal everyone agreed on. His personality carried the room. His timing kept morale steady. His presence created the rhythm of the show. While Joe Martin worked magic with sheet metal and fabrication, and Amanda kept builds organized with her calm, precise leadership, Shag filled a completely different role: the energy source. He brought life into the shop the same way an alternator brings energy into an engine. Without it, the machine still runs, but it never runs quite the same. And that's what made his disappearance so jarring. People didn't just lose a character. They lost the heartbeat of the negotiation bench, the bridge between the shop and the customers. Almost every car that rolled into Iron Resurrection started with Shag greeting someone in the parking lot or digging through a field of forgotten parts looking for a diamond in the rust. He wasn't the builder. He wasn't the painter. He wasn't the showrunner. He was the spark. And when that spark vanished, something subtle shifted inside the show. You could hear it in the pacing, feel it in the silence between scenes. See it in the faces of the crew who now had to carry the load he once shouldered with a shrug and a smile. Fans didn't just miss the character. They missed the man who made the shop feel alive. The first whispers didn't come from tabloids or producers. They came from tired crew members, late-night filming sessions, and long, unedited moments that hinted something wasn't right. People close to the show noted that the realities of filming Iron Resurrection were very different from what viewers saw on TV. In the shop, you had real customer deadlines, real budgets, real metal, and real pressure. But on the set, you had camera crews, lighting setups, retakes, interviews, and story beats that didn't always line up with the pace of a working business. Some days, the cameras wanted 3 hours of negotiation or 10 minutes of screen time. Other days, a build that needed focus was interrupted for a shot list. It created a natural tension, not drama, not fights, just the kind of slow-burning stress that eats at people over time. Rumors began to circulate among fans. Shag looks tired this season. He's not joking around as much. He seems frustrated. None of this was ever confirmed, but the patterns were there. When you mix creative differences with demanding schedules, something eventually tilts out of balance. Even within the fan community, people sensed it. The change wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, like a tone shift in a song you've heard 1,000 times. Something in Shag's energy seemed dimmer. Something in his humor felt strained. He still delivered laughs, still made deals happen, but behind the smile, something was wearing him down. And when the rumors picked up steam, they didn't revolve around scandal. They revolved around one simple idea. Maybe the job was starting to take more from him than it was giving back. Those whispers grew louder when episodes showed him missing from scenes where he normally thrived. Negotiations happened without him. Cars were bought without his input. Decisions were made off-screen that he once would have steered. It wasn't drama, it was drift. The kind that happens when passion and pressure collide, and only one survives. For longtime viewers, the shift wasn't obvious at first. Shag wasn't the kind of guy you expected to vanish. He was too loud, too charismatic, too woven into the DNA of the show. But as seasons progressed, the signs became impossible to ignore. There were fewer negotiation scenes, fewer outdoor pickups, fewer behind-the-scenes conversations where he cracked jokes or eased tension. Instead, entire episodes aired where he simply wasn't there. No explanation, no acknowledgement, just absence. Fans began posting timestamps online. This is the last time he appears this season. He's gone from episode 7 completely. Why didn't he show up for the reveal? And the pattern wasn't random. It was progressive. Each season shaved off a little more of his presence. The Shag that opened deals with a handshake and a punchline slowly faded from the frame. His absence changed the pacing of the show. Without him negotiating the incoming builds, the episodes shifted focus. Without his humor buffering the intense shop moments, scenes felt heavier. It wasn't that the show got worse. It was that the show got different. Behind the scenes, insiders say Shag pulled back quietly, without creating friction. He stopped appearing on shoot days, stopped traveling with the crew, stopped inserting himself into deals he once handled effortlessly. It was as if he were slowly walking out the door while everyone was too busy filming to notice. And by the time fans fully realized he was gone, he already had been for months. His departure wasn't a blowout. It wasn't a fight. It was a fade. The kind of exit someone makes when they've been wrestling with a decision for a long time, and finally reach the point where staying hurts more than leaving. Most people imagine reality TV as chaotic, but manageable. Cameras roll, personalities shine, cars get built, and everything works out by the episode's end. But those who have lived inside a real restoration shop know the truth. The work never stops. The deadlines never relax. And the cameras only make everything heavier. For Shag, the toll didn't arrive all at once. It crept in gradually, showing up in the early mornings when he'd walk into the shop before filming and see 3 cars behind schedule. It showed up in the late nights when producers needed pickup lines after a 14-hour day. It showed up in the moments where the shop needed decisions and the show needed story, both demanding his voice at the same time. He was the negotiator, the go-between, the face customers trusted. But he was also expected to keep the energy high, to keep the storyline moving, to keep fans entertained. The man who could light up a room with a single joke suddenly had to carry that spark through exhaustion, through stress, through work that didn't stop when the cameras turned off. People close to him described the shift. He laughed a little less. He sighed a little more. He took longer pauses between words, as if deciding whether the sentence was worth the energy. Burnout doesn't explode. It erodes. Every episode required him to be on. Not because he was faking a persona, Shag was authentically himself, but because the job demanded his best even on days when he had nothing left to give. The show moved at television speed. The shop moved at real-life speed. Shag moved somewhere in between, stretched thinner every season. And quietly, he began losing the part of himself that loved the work. The deals felt heavier. The jokes felt rehearsed. The builds felt rushed. The pressure clouded the passion that had once made him the heartbeat of the show. In the end, it wasn't a dramatic moment that broke him. It was the slow collision of 2 worlds that weren't meant to overlap. The world of television and the world of real craftsmanship. And Shag was caught in the middle, trying to keep them both alive until it nearly drained him completely. Behind Shag's bigger-than-life personality was something viewers rarely saw. The man trying to balance a life outside the shop. While the show projected humor and hustle, off-camera, he carried a weight that grew with every season. Family commitments clashed with unpredictable filming days. Personal obligations were swallowed by the show's demands. And the more popular the series became, the less space he had to breathe. People close to him noticed the signs. The late arrivals, not because he didn't care, but because he hadn't slept. The long silences during lunch where he stared at the ground instead of joining the usual jokes. The way he'd slip away from crowds at events, needing a few minutes where nobody wanted anything from him. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't anger, it was depletion. He had always been the guy who held things together. The middleman, the negotiator, the peacemaker. But being the person everyone counted on came with a cost. Every time he absorbed tension, every time he smoothed over a customer issue, every time he filled the room with humor to lighten the mood, he carried it home with him. The show magnified everything. Fans wanted photos, conversations, stories, and moments. They saw the loud, wild Shag. They didn't see the quiet one, the man trying to find time for relationships, for rest, for simply being still. The more his public life grew, the smaller his private one became. And the truth he later admitted, indirectly, quietly, was that he'd reached a point where he couldn't recognize himself. The constant pressure to be the version of Shag fans loved left little room for the man he actually was. He didn't resent the show. He resented the version of himself he felt forced to maintain. It wasn't burnout from work. It was burnout from being Shag all the time. And once he began to see how far he'd drifted from the life he wanted, the decision that once seemed unthinkable suddenly became the only path forward. Every long decline has a tipping point. A moment where something inside snaps so quietly that only the person experiencing it hears it happen. For Shag, that moment didn't come during a dramatic argument or a high-stakes deal. It came on an ordinary workday that should have been forgettable. 2 builds were behind schedule. The crew was waiting on parts that hadn't arrived. producers were pushing to turn a minor issue into an on-camera storyline. A customer showed up early, demanding answers. And all of it hit at the exact same time. A perfect storm of pressure from every direction. Shag tried to juggle it, like he always did. He cracked a joke to ease the tension. He made promises he wasn't sure the shop could fulfill. He tried to keep the cameras happy while keeping the customers calm. But for the first time, something didn't click. The charm that always worked suddenly felt heavy. The humor felt forced. And in the middle of trying to solve everyone else's problems, he realized he couldn't solve his own. That was the moment he felt it. The drop in his stomach, the tightening in his chest, the quiet, unmistakable thought. I can't do this anymore. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't make a scene. He simply stepped away from the chaos, walked outside into the Texas heat, and let the silence wash over him. The noise of the shop faded behind him. The camera stayed back, and Shag stood alone, realizing he had reached the edge. He didn't storm out. He didn't quit on the spot. He just didn't go back in. For the rest of the day, the crew assumed he was off handling negotiations or scouting parts. They'd seen him disappear like that before, always returning with a lead or a laugh. But this time, he drove home. And by the time the sun set, the decision was already made. He later said it wasn't anger that pushed him out. It was clarity. The sudden understanding that if he stayed, he'd lose the passion that made him who he was. And leaving was the only way to keep that part of himself alive. When Shag finally stepped away from the shop that day, no announcement followed. No farewell episode. No final monologue. It was the kind of exit that felt less like a choice and more like a release. A quiet surrender to years of pressure that had gone unspoken. In the weeks that followed, viewers waited for an explanation that never came. The show continued filming. Builds went on. Episodes aired. But something subtle had shifted. The energy felt different. The rhythm that once relied on Shag's voice, laughs, and chaos suddenly felt hollow. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply missing the pulse that used to drive the show forward. Inside the shop, the crew respected his silence. They didn't speculate publicly. They didn't push him for answers. Everyone who worked beside him understood that when a man like Shag walks away quietly, it isn't weakness, it's self-preservation. And people close to him say the crew felt the weight of his absence, deeply, even if they rarely talked about it. Fans filled the silence with their own theories. Message boards lit up. Oetai's social media posts demanded explanations. Some blamed producers. Others imagined behind-the-scenes conflicts. Most simply missed the man who made them feel like they were part of the shop. But Shag never fed the rumors. Not once. He didn't defend himself, nor did he point fingers. His absence became a kind of dignified mystery, one he chose not to unravel for the world. As months passed, the show adapted, but those who watched closely could tell something unspoken lingered in the background, like a story left unfinished. Because Shag wasn't just a character on a screen. He was the spark plug that made Iron Resurrection feel alive. And maybe that's why his exit was so quiet. Some departures echo louder in silence than any goodbye could. For Shag, leaving wasn't an escape. It was closure. The moment he allowed himself to step out of a world that no longer matched the man he wanted to be. For years, Shag said almost nothing about why he left. No interviews, no social media rants, no dramatic declarations. Just silence. The kind that makes fans wonder. Because silence from a man who once filled the screen with non-stop energy feels like a message all its own. But recently, in a rare conversation, he let a few honest words slip out. Not anger, not regret, just truth. It stopped being fun, he said, and when the fun's gone, you're just surviving. Those 7 words hit harder than any scandal ever could, because they weren't sensational. They were human. They came from someone who spent years pouring his personality into a show that demanded more and more of him. The charm, the humor, the deals, the energy. They weren't acts. They were pieces of himself he gave away freely, until giving became exhausting. He also admitted something else. I missed the days when we built cars because we loved it. Not because a deadline said we had to. That line revealed everything fans suspected, but never heard confirmed. The show accelerated life. Builds became storylines. Moments became scenes. Passion became schedule. And Shag was caught between what he loved and what the cameras required. He didn't blame the crew. He didn't blame the network. He didn't blame the work. He simply acknowledged that his soul didn't fit the rhythm of television anymore. People who know him say he rediscovered parts of himself once he stepped away. The quiet evenings, the unhurried projects, the ability to work without someone pointing a lens at his face. He began appearing at car shows, casually, smiling, relaxed, no longer carrying the weight of performance on his shoulders. And in that freedom, he found clarity. Leaving wasn't quitting. It was protecting the spark the show had nearly smothered. Shag didn't lose the passion. He saved it. After all the rumors, all the speculation, all the unanswered questions, the truth behind Shag's departure turns out to be something far less dramatic and far more profound. Not scandal, not conflict, not betrayal, just a truth many people discover too late. He left because staying would have cost him himself. Throughout his time on the show, Shag became the lightning rod of energy, humor, and negotiation. But that identity wasn't the whole man. It was the version the world saw, and slowly, that version began replacing the real one. He felt it in the late nights when exhaustion drowned out enthusiasm. He felt it in the mornings when the thought of performing for the cameras weighed heavier than any wrench he ever lifted. He felt it in the quiet moments when he realized he was giving everything to a life that took more than it gave back. For Shag, the dark truth isn't about wrongdoing or drama. It's about the hidden cost of being the center of attention. The cost nobody talks about. The pressure to always be on. The fear of letting people down. The slow erosion of joy. He left because he recognized something most people never admit. If you lose yourself for the spotlight, there's no guarantee you'll get yourself back. Walking away wasn't the easy choice. It was the hardest. It meant letting go of fame, fan love, constant attention, all the things people chase. But for Shag, those things weren't worth sacrificing the passion that made him who he was long before the cameras arrived. In the end, Shag didn't disappear. He reclaimed his life. He stepped out of the chaos and returned to the version of himself he trusted most. The man who loved cars, loved people, and loved the freedom of living on his own terms. And sometimes, that's the only truth that matters.